Good morning, and thank you for being here today. I'm Mary McCord. I'm the Acting Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division at the Department of Justice. And with me today is FBI Executive Assistant Director Paula Bate, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of California, Brian Stretch, and Office of International Affairs Director Vaughn Airy. We're here to announce a major law enforcement action related to one of the largest dated breaches in U.S. history. Service, an intelligence and law enforcement agency of the Russian Federation, and two criminal hackers with whom they conspired to accomplish these intrusions. Dmitry Dokuchaev and Igor Sushchin, both FSB officers, protected, directed, facilitated, and paid criminal hackers to collect information through computer intrusions in the United States and elsewhere. They worked with co-conspirators Alexei Belan and Karim Baratov to hack into the computers of American companies providing email and internet-related services, to maintain unauthorized access to those computers, and to steal information, including information about individual users and the private contents of their accounts. The defendants targeted Yahoo accounts of Russian and U.S. government officials, including cybersecurity, diplomatic, and military personnel. They also targeted Russian journalists, numerous employees of other providers whose networks the conspirators sought to exploit, and employees of financial services and other commercial entities. Belan has been indicted twice before in the United States for 3 intrusions into e-commerce companies that victimize millions of customers, and he has been one of the FBI's most wanted cyber criminals for more than 3 years. Belan's notorious criminal conduct and a pending Interpol red notice did not stop at the FSB officers who, instead of detaining him, used him to break into Yahoo's networks. Meanwhile, Belan used his relationship with the 2 FSB officers and his access to Yahoo to commit additional crimes to line his own pockets with money. Specifically, Belan used his access to Yahoo to search for and steal financial information such as gift card and credit card numbers from users' email accounts. He also gained access to more than 30 million Yahoo accounts whose contacts he then stole to facilitate an email scam. With these charges, the Department of Justice is continuing to send the powerful message that we will not allow individuals, groups, nation-states, or a combination of them to compromise the privacy of our citizens, the economic interests of our companies, or the security of our country. For those who may not be familiar with the FSB, it is an intelligence and law enforcement agency and a successor to the Soviet Union's KGB. The FSB unit that the defendants worked for, the Center for Information Security, also known as Center 18, is also the FBI's point of contact in Moscow for cybercrime matters. The involvement and direction of FSB officers with law enforcement responsibilities makes this conduct that much more egregious. There are no free passes for foreign state-sponsored criminal behavior. Through the work of the National Security Division, the FBI, the United States Attorney's offices around the country, we continue to pursue national security cyber threats using all available tools to investigate malicious activity and attribute it to the country, agency, and even the individuals involved. When possible and supported by the evidence, we intend to charge those individuals and bring them to justice. As I wrap up, I am also pleased to announce that a 4th co-conspirator charged in the indictment, Karim Baratov, was arrested just yesterday in Canada on a U.S. government provisional arrest warrant. I'd like to thank all of those who worked diligently to bring the investigation to this point, including the men and women of the National Security Division, the FBI, and the U.S. Attorney's offices for the Northern District of California and the Criminal Division's Office of International Affairs for their tireless work. I'd also like to extend a special thanks to Yahoo and Google, whose customers were targeted and who cooperated with law enforcement. It is very important for corporations around the country to know that when you are going against the resources and backing of a nation state, it is not a fair fight, and it is not a fight you are likely to win alone. But you do not have to go it alone. We can put the full capabilities of the United States behind you to make cases like this, but we cannot do it without your help. At this time, I'd like to introduce FBI Executive Assistant Director Paula Bate, who will provide additional details on today's announcement.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today's announcement is a testament to the tremendous work and extraordinary efforts that have been done to identify and hold accountable those individuals believed to be responsible for this significant breach of Yahoo's networks and information technology systems. This indictment details how Russian Federal Security Service officers working together with criminal hackers conspired to plan and carry out one of the largest cyber intrusions in U.S. history. These perpetrators compromised the company's networks, along with the accounts and personal information of approximately 500 million Yahoo users, and further stole millions of user contacts in order to carry out fraud schemes for their own personal financial gain and enrichment, among other things. I want to note this was a highly complex, long-term investigation that has only reached this stage as a result of the relentless and persistent and dedicated efforts of the team. It also further underscores the immense and essential value of early, proactive engagement and cooperation between the private sector and the government. Our ability to identify, detect, and ultimately hold cybercriminals accountable under the law while preventing and mitigating harm is contingent upon our ability to work closely and cooperatively with companies and individuals who are targeted and victimized, as in this case. As Mary noted, yesterday's arrest of co-conspirator Karim Baratov in Canada, which was executed by the Toronto Police Service's Fugitive Squad, demonstrates our total and unyielding commitment to finding and bringing to justice cybercriminals, no matter where they operate or reside. The criminal hackers in this case used a variety of techniques to access the information they sought, including email spear phishing, downloading malicious files and code onto Yahoo's networks, leasing servers in the U.S. and around the world to carry out their schemes and avoid detection, and registering email accounts using false subscriber information. As this indictment demonstrates, regardless of what methods are employed or where the criminal actors live, if you illegally target U.S. citizens or American companies, you will be identified, pursued, and held to account wherever you are. I want to highlight and commend the exceptional work of the FBI's San Francisco Field Office, the FBI Cyber Division, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California, and our partners here at the Department of Justice and the National Security Division. Thank you to all of those involved for your outstanding and ongoing contributions to resolving this case. We are extremely grateful as well to our international partners for their assistance and support leading up to these criminal charges today. Those partners include Canada's Royal Canadian Mounted Police and, as mentioned, the Toronto Police Service and their Fugitive Squad. As well, the United Kingdom's MI5 made substantial contributions to the advancement of this investigation also. I want to thank additionally our FBI legal attaché personnel in Ottawa and in London for their great work in supporting and moving forward the operations and investigations that underlie the charges today. And I want to close by saying that we at the FBI, together with our partners in the DOJ, will continue to work hard day in and day out together with our interagency, international, and private sector partners to, one, identify those who conduct cyber attacks against the United States and our allies, two, to identify and expose them to the world, and three, most importantly, to hunt them down and hold them responsible no matter where they live or where they attempt to hide. Thank you all for being here today, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Brian Stretch, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of California. Sir.
Paul, thank you. My name is Brian Stretch. I'm the U.S. Attorney in San Francisco. I'm pleased to join the head of the National Security Division and the executive assistant of the FBI to advise you of the criminal charges returned in connection with the widely reported Yahoo breach that occurred in 2014. As an important reminder to everybody, the criminal charges in the indictment announced today are allegations only, and all 4 defendants are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. We are joined today by the investigating AUSA, National Security Division lawyers, and experienced FBI agents who work tirelessly with Yahoo and Google to identify the responsible parties and their methods and means for perpetrating one of the largest data breaches ever. Silicon Valley is home to the world's leading technology companies. The Valley's computer infrastructure provides the means by which people around the world communicate with each other in business and in their personal lives. Every day, criminal hackers endeavor to gain unauthorized access to personal and proprietary information for nefarious purposes. The Department of Justice and the technology companies together share a common goal and responsibility to protect private communications from cybercriminals. The privacy and security of our internet-based communications must be governed by the rule of law. People rightly expect that the government and technology companies both will make every effort to ensure that communications through internet providers will remain private. Exceptions to this principle should be few and governed by law. To this end, in recent years, the DOJ has made cybersecurity a top priority and has taken a number of steps to protect the public from cybercrime. Part of this effort has involved conducting extensive outreach throughout Silicon Valley and elsewhere to encourage service providers to report unauthorized intrusions and the theft of trade secrets. Both the DOJ and the technology companies throughout the country are beginning to see fruits of this outreach. The benefits of reporting intrusions to the U.S. government include the following. The companies are able to obtain assistance from the government to determine the scope and extent of the intrusion and to determine the identity of the hackers. The companies are also able to obtain information about what use the hackers put to the stolen information that has been obtained. And by working with investigators, the companies can target and limit investigatory methods so as to prevent unnecessary access to the private records of innocent victims and account holders. Regarding the hacks we are talking about today, Yahoo and Google informed DOJ of the data breaches, cooperated extensively with the FBI and DOJ attorneys to investigate the intrusions, and by leveraging the combined efforts of the government and the service providers, they assisted in effectuating a targeted, streamlined, and effective investigation. The update to this type of approach: the responsible parties have been identified, charges have been returned, one defendant has been arrested, and arrest warrants have been issued for the remaining defendants. Importantly, the cooperative efforts of the government and the private sector in this instance allowed the U.S. Attorney's Office, along with the National Security Division and the FBI, to accomplish these initial results while maintaining the fundamental privacy interests of the account holders who had their information stolen. We commend both Yahoo and Google for working with our office, the FBI, and the National Security Division lawyers to identify and seek justice for the perpetrators of these intrusions. Okay. And I'll turn it back to Mary.
We'll take a few questions now.
Just wondering, what do you see as the purpose of this conspiracy? Was it financial gain or was it intelligence gathering?
So what the indictment alleges is that these FSB officers used criminal hackers to gain information that clearly some of which has intelligence value, but in doing so and in using criminal hackers to do so, the criminal hackers used this opportunity also to line their own pockets and for private financial gain.
Ms. McCord, you said this morning at the Financial Times seminar that the government has a number of tools at its disposal, including prosecution. will the U.S. seek other means other than these indictments to go after the Russians, sanctions, trade limitations?
I think those are things that have yet to be determined. We, as you noted, we are committed to using all tools, and we certainly, in this case, we were able to develop the evidence to the point where we were able to bring criminal charges consistent with the standard required for that, but that doesn't mean we won't look to see if there are other tools that might be available.
Will you look to see if there are other tools?
I think we will definitely engage in those discussions and considerations.
Is the expulsion of diplomats one of those?
For this type of matter, that's certainly nothing that we've been, that I'm prepared to address today.
Also, real quickly, you talked about this, two of the indicted are members of the Center 18, which was the FBI's point of contact in Moscow on cybercrime matters. And you described it in the press release as beyond the pale. Wouldn't it be just natural that people would use that to exploit this?
I think what is...
Does that speak of a certain degree of naivete on the part of the U.S. government?
So I don't think it does. The point there is these are the very people that we are supposed to work with cooperatively in law enforcement channels. And rather than do that type of work, they actually turned, sort of against that type of work. And I can certainly pass to Paul if he has any additional comments on that.
I would just add, we've had limited cooperation with that element of the Russian government in the past. In this case, with respect to Bilan, we have asked, he's been charged previously also in one case out of the Northern District of California and also in Nevada back in 2012. We have asked for his return in 2014 through official channels to the Russian government, and we've had no response. And I think that is reflective of the relationship and the approach we needed to take in this case in terms of the lack of cooperation we've gotten.
Need to change or end?
We need and have to have cooperation from all international partners in order to resolve cases like this, among many other threats that we face. But when we look at this case, and I'm speaking to this case now, we expect and hope for their cooperation here. And in fact, post this announcement, we're going to go out with another official request, not just for Mr. Bilan again, but also for the other two individuals that are charged here and are residing in Russia now.
Somebody else asked a question. Next.
This model that you are alleging of FSB officers working with criminal hackers, is this sort of the new normal that we're seeing in Russia, or was this a deviation from your standard expectation of how these crimes are carried out? And how were you able to make the link that all four of them were in tandem together?
So to take your first question, I'm not going to be specific as to Russia on that. We are certainly seeing more and more use by nation states of criminal hackers to, to carry out some of their intentions. That I don't think is necessarily unique to Russia in this particular case, the FSB. And the indictment, I think, alleges in pretty great detail the conspiracy among these four men, the sharing of infrastructure and hacking techniques and tools and procedures, the sharing of the cookies that were minted to be able to gain access into accounts, and the really contracting with Baratov to do additional intrusions into account holders at other email providers such as Google.
Ms. McCord, do you think that there's a connection between this case and Russia and FSB's interference in the election and the hacking there? And can you speak to the president's claim that as part of that, he himself was subjected to surveillance at Trump Tower?
So our indictment doesn't allege any connection between this intrusion and the intrusions into the DNC. That's a separate investigation, and I have no comment on the president.
FSB was involved in both. Is that just coincidental? You think these were separate operations for, on the one hand, to be hacking into Yahoo and Google, and other parts of the agency to be hacking into DNC and the election process?
We don't have anything that suggests in our indictment that there's any relationship between those. And that's an ongoing investigation.
Question, is there any evidence that you've uncovered? I understand the indictment does not address it, but did investigators uncover any evidence, or is this the same model that you saw with respect to the DNC hack?
I'm not sure I'm fully understanding your question about, is this the same model that we saw? And if you're talking about use of criminal hackers, I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but that's an ongoing and separate investigation, and I really don't have any further information on that.
Remarks, you did not specify whether these two FSB officers.
I'm sorry,
In your remarks, you did not specify whether these FSB officers were acting individually or on behalf of the FSB. Can you? That's the first question. The second question is, Mr. Belan, based on the FBI warrant here, it says he's a Latvian national. In the Department of Justice statement, it says he's a Russian. So is he Latvian or Russian?
So we will have to get back to you with any correction there on those.
You have two official documents with this. Yeah. Can you answer the first question, though?
I no longer recall your first question.
I'm sorry. The first question is whether these two FSB officers were acting individually or on behalf of that agency.
So when they're, as our indictment alleges, and as we have reason to believe based on our evidence, they were acting in their capacity as FSB officials.
The Attorney General is quoted in this press release. I just want to clarify, is he is not recused from this investigation?
He's not recused from this investigation.
Do you anticipate that the Treasury Secretary will use the authority granted to him in President Obama's executive order about malicious cyber hacking to freeze the assets of either of the two FSB officers here? Is that a potential enforcement tool that you all?
Well, I mean, there is, as you are aware from this morning's presentation, there is an executive order that allows for sanctioning in certain circumstances, including circumstances involving economic espionage. So again, to go back to sort of my response to Pete's question, I think the tools that are potentially on the table remain on the table.
Then for Paul, can you just talk a little bit more about how to maintain, or if it's possible to maintain, a trusting working relationship between the FBI and the FSB, given these indictments? How does that work?
I think that's a challenge. It's something we're going to continue to work at, and I think this case is going to be a great test of that, so we can gauge the level of cooperation we get from them. Now, having charged these individuals, we would like to see their full cooperation and assistance in bringing these individuals in justice to justice and further aiding us in expanding the scope of the investigation.
May I ask about Dokuchaev? He had a history before going to the FSB of operating in the dark web and using this alias of Four. Do you have any details about whether he continued using that alias and continued conducting criminal activity once he was formally part of the FSB? And which dark web forum did he operate on, and what kind of criminal activity did he engage in?
So I'm not prepared to address those questions. I'm prepared to talk about what we've charged in this indictment.
Just to go back to clarify the earlier question, did you see a similar strategy or model that was used in the DNC hack as you saw in this case?
So that's an ongoing investigation, and so it's not one that I'm prepared to discuss what we've seen and what the status of that investigation is.
Has the DOJ or FBI heard anything from the Russian government as far as the possibility of extradition?
We do not have an extradition treaty with Russia. We would hope that they would respect our criminal justice system and respect these charges and what they need to do.
All right, last question. When can we expect a Canadian trial?
So that's an ongoing pending matter, which extradition will be requested, but I can't estimate what kind of timeline that would be on.
I just wanted to press one further on a previous question. Do you, does the Justice Department, have any evidence that President Trump was wiretapped during his campaign?
That's not part of this indictment or what we're here to discuss today. So.
All right, thank you very much, folks. Thank you. There will be an off-camera background.